Well, it's time for another Degrassi episode, and now we talk about the Rick Murray case study. I know I did a case study about Emma Nelson's relationships and JT York as a character before his untimely death. Now it's time for me to, obviously, on this October 11th, talk about Rick Murray. What is with this guy? So, anyway, a lot of people want to know about him. A lot of this information is based off the Degrassi wiki, the fandom wiki, because obviously I don't know a whole much about Rick. Rick Murray was a major recurring character on Degrassi. He dated Terry McGregor, but the relationship turned abusive and resulted in Terry in a coma. He was expelled for this, but this is wrong. He was not expelled. Just he was pulled out of school by his parents. A lot of people forget about that. That it was his parents who pulled him out of school. He was not expelled for this. But he was given a chance to come back the next year, and soon after he brought a gun to school. He did not kill anybody. However, before he could kill one of his prime targets, Elman Nelson, Sean wrestled him with a gun and killed Rick by accident. Before his death, Rick had Emma gunpoint and actually shot Jimmy, which paralyzed him from the waist down. He had one friend, and that was Toby. All of Rick's bullying culminated Degrassi through a storyline that changed his history forever. So anyway, Rick had one of his famous lines, and it was, I like it at Degrassi, or I used to. I was horrible, but I've changed. All those people who hate me, I want to show them who I really am. Show them how wrong they are. Basically, that is Rick, being bullied and all that. So anyway, his nickname is Rick, or Ricky. Spitter calls him Freak Boy, Psycho by a few people, Creep, Punk, Big Yellow Loser, Psycho Boy, Hellboy, Chicken Boy, Buddy. It says date of death October 31st, 2004. So logically, he died. They said he died on Halloween. His network is that he and Mrs. Murray, his mom, should talk about that. Like his dad, he had a relationship with Terry. He had an attraction to Emma, but unfortunately, Emma didn't do it. And then Darcy too. Right, Sparks? What is that? But anyway, he went in 10 episodes, and of course he died. I want to talk about Mrs. Murray. She was a devoted mother to Rick and was proud of him. She did not want Rick to transfer back, but relented because Rick wanted to show everyone he had changed. Okay. When her son was killed in the school shooting on October 31st, 2004, she was absolutely devastated. Basically, she appeared in Don't Dream It's Over. That's when Rick, of course, put Terry in the coma. Anyway, Spinner, after finding out that Terry's in the hospital, yanks Rick out of his mom's car and hits him. But Rick's mom tells him to stay away from my son. So anyway, um, she has a box telling Spinner to let him go, and she basically tells Spinner and Paige to stay away from Rick. So anyway, she's talking about it. In Time Stands Still Part 1, she helps Rick get ready for the competition in his father's old suit, which doesn't fit him. She tells him that in a year he'll be the same size as his father, and says that his dad does not like being sent out of town to do business. She talks to Toby, saying if he's excited as Rick for the competition. And basically, she says that Rick has told her that his new friends from the quiz team, Emma and Jimmy, are inseparable, and basically says that, you know, Toby and says that Rick says you and Toby are gonna Rick no. She says to Toby, you and Rick are gonna run the school. But anyway, she actually reveals that she wanted Rick to go to another school, but she said don't. But he said you worry too much, mother. And of course, in Back in Black, when she has to deal with her son's death, at Rick's visitation, Toby and Manny find Mrs. Murray staring at a picture of Rick that's on top of the coffin. Toby wants to leave, but his mom comforts him, and JT even shows up talking to Mrs. Murray for what happened. So anyway, she was only in 4 episodes, and it was never explained if her and her husband had to deal with backlash because, you know, the son had a gun. So anyway, the background of Rick is that he was an only child who was bullied by a lot because he hurt Terry by putting her in a coma. He was expelled, which is wrong. He was actually taken away from the school by his parents. He returned to Degrassi, but he was hated for what he did about Terry. Rick actually wanted to shoot Paige, but Paige talked him off the ledge. He actually shot Jimmy and attempted to shoot Emma, and Sean accidentally made Rick's death. So anyway, in Whisper to a Scream, he actually leaves Terry, Rose's in her locker, and is caught by Terry. He confesses to her. But the relationship, there's a relationship, but it gets abusive. Basically, Terry takes Rick's tips for a school play and basically embarrasses her in front of the whole school. Terry should have listened to Jimmy. This leads Rick to believe that Terry has more of a crush on Jimmy than himself. That's probably why. Rick was mad by hurting Terry often, but later apologizing because of his fears of her leaving him for Jimmy. But basically, Terry was not happy. But when Rick pushes her into a wall, she finally dumps him. Months later, they're partners in a trust exercise. And they get along with each other. Everyone is shocked about what Rick did. And Terry wants to invite him to the road trip Paige is having when she gets the family fan to herself. Terry tries her best to talk to everyone, says that Rick has changed. However, Paige and Rick get in a fight, which leads Paige calling him a psycho when he runs in the forest. Terry runs after him and tells them that Paige was just being Paige and they should go back. Rick is mad because his feelings mean nothing to Terry, pushes her to the ground, but she accidentally hits her head on a cinder block. I thought it was a rock, but she's in a coma. Rick had to leave Degrassi and Terry went to a private school. So in the episode Mercy Street, he returns. He has to repeat his 10th grade because of his departure. Everyone is mad at him. The other students feel that he should not be in the school, but Raj disagrees. Basically, Raj is protecting Rick. And, second chance. Basically, Marco and Alex, of course, tell everyone that, why is Raj letting a psycho into the school? But it's simple because the problem with it is that Rick never got charged with any criminal charges. I think his parents would probably be upset if their son got charged with anything. But the police and school board would have found out about it if Rick was charged with anything and basically would have told Raj, who would have probably had second thoughts. Paige and Emma decided to do a silent protest with orange ribbons, mostly to get back at Rick because, Raj says that this is not one of your stupid campaigns. Well, not realizing that men are victims of dating and domestic violence just as much as women are. Not completely true. Women are way worse. It's way worse with women than men. Trust me. But anyway, Rick finds himself the victim of violence and actually experiencing how it must have felt for Terry when he hurt her, making him feel remorseful. He feels remorseful. And Jay basically beats up Rick in a spot. Well, basically, Rick tries to apologize, but they refuse to hear him. So anyway, Jay beats up Rick in the same spot where he hurt Terry. But Emma realizes it's gone too far and that she should not, what they're doing is wrong. Basically, Emma goes against the protest and decides to, and unfortunately loses Paige's click, who basically tell her that it's over. We're not defending you ever again. So anyway, she talks to Rick the day after because they're acquaintances. Rick actually ended up with a secret crush, thinking that Emma saved him because Emma had feelings for him. Wrongo. Emma was just trying to do what was right, and she realized that the silent protest was a bad idea because it was making Rick hurt more, and they weren't going to let up at all. Despite everything, the bullying continues. Rick actually ends up at the Spirit Squad car wash to try to help his mom out by taking her car for a drive. Nobody wants them. Nobody wants them. So anyway, he has a relationship with Toby, like a friendship with Toby, being paired up in Whack Your Brain, like Reach for the Top. So basically, Heather, St. Clair, and Emma are paired up. But anyway, they have friendly competitions like a Kiss Emma contest and Who Can Kiss the Most Girls contest. Rick was completely losing because obviously no one wanted to come near him. Toby actually paid Darcy $5 to kiss Rick. They're feeling sorry for Rick. Unfortunately, that gets Toby to be hit the scorn of Jay and Spinner, who actually shoved Toby in a locker. Darcy actually did not know about Terry's abuse, the abuse to Terry. So Darcy actually ended up not realizing it. Now, of course, there's a storyline that Darcy was actually supposed to be Jay's sister in the series, but it didn't happen. So anyway, after Heather becomes ill with mono before the competition, Jimmy is now a contestant alongside Rick. That happens because Rick and Jimmy bumped into each other in the hallway right after Rick put the spray paint and X on everyone's car that was tormenting him. Simpson asks geography and sports questions to Jimmy. Jimmy thankfully answers them and is on the team because of Heather's sickness. Rick is, of course, not pleased because of the way Jimmy is tormenting him. Emma says, go to Simpson. Rick refuses and decides to go to Raditch, but unfortunately, he's not straightforward at Raditch. By leaving out the fact that he's being bullied meant that Raditch was not too pleased. And Raditch basically said that Rick is just trying to make friends and forcing Raditch to do that. But anyway, Jimmy actually ends up befriending Rick, mostly because Rick tells Jimmy that, I'm being tortured for so many weeks, and now Toby's going to get the brunt of it because they want Toby. Jimmy actually realizes that he's gone too far. He decides to talk to Jay, Alex, and Spinner about leaving him alone and become friendly and defending him, which isn't bad. Like, it gets Spinner, Jay, and Alex a bit shocked. But then Rick makes the politically incorrect X sign, Wakanda Forever, and basically that means Spinner, Jay, and Alex decide to reach things up a notch because they're upset that not only is Rick basically bullying them, now Jimmy's on their side. On your back to finals, Rick is teamed with Toby, Jimmy, and Emma. Degrassi ends up tied with Northern Tech. Rick is chosen to break the tie, but mostly because Spinner and Jay convince him that he should do the tiebreaker, not realizing, of course, that Spinner and Jay were going to set up a Paint and Feathers prank with Alex's help. Rick actually wins the competition, but unfortunately gets yellow paint and feathers spilled on him. Unfortunately, he gets humiliated again when Emma basically is upset at Rick after Rick tries to kiss Emma. Emma tells him to get a clue because all she wanted was to protect him. Rick goes home and finds his father's handgun. So he decides to hide it in his backpack and ready to shoot somebody. He wanted to shoot Paige because Paige was the one who made the Rick sentiment. But because she admits that she was disgusted with the prank and her sympathies, Rick actually changes his mind. And Rick slowly puts the gun down before Paige sees it and tells her that he should never have hurt Terry and all that. And they both understand each other. Rick decides to clean himself in the washroom and thinking that I don't have to shoot anything. So anyway, he appears remorseful and smiles because he thought that bringing the gun was dumb. But Jay and Spinner walk in. Rick actually hides in a stall because Spinner is ready to tell Jay he thinks Raditch knows about the paint and feathers. Mostly because he had that fight with Jimmy in which he actually played his hand, if you will. He told Jimmy about the prank. Jay notices the yellow paint in the sink and actually gets Spinner to change the story and talk about Jimmy. So basically, Spinner plays along. Rick is hurt because he thought Jimmy stabbed him in the back, confronted Jimmy, and shot him in the back as he tried to run away. Now, it's important to know, of course, that if Rick had actually not turned his head when he shot Jimmy, he probably would have done much more damage to Jimmy. He probably would have killed him. So anyway, Rick goes after Emma because he felt dismayed that Emma actually rejected him. Emma is with Sean and Toby. Sean actually wants them to walk away, but Rick tells him, "Don't run away from me." Basically, he yells at Emma, basically saying that Emma ruined his life. Sean tries his best to convince Rick to put the gun down, and actually is close, but Rick points his gun at Emma, and Sean decides to grab the gun. Basically, they wrestle with the gun, a gunshot is heard, and we actually find out that Rick is dead. So basically, that's just what happens. A lot of things happen. And then, of course, in Back in Black, Toby had to deal with the fact that his friend was a psycho. Danny Van Sant and JT were basically mad at Toby for being friends with a psycho. Manny tells JT that if JT was loyal to Toby and not with Danny, Toby probably would never have been friends with Rick. JT does actually take the sayings in stride and apologizes to Toby at Rick's visitation, saying that it doesn't matter what I think, it should never have happened in the first place. So basically, that happens. Sean is treated as a hero, but unfortunately, he had trouble with his feelings about the shooting, and it's manifested in the fact that he nearly died in a jet ski accident. So basically, he moves back to Wasaga Beach. Sean expresses the feelings about the shooting and crying. Radich gets transferred to a new school because of the shooting, and Hansel Ackles is principal. Jimmy is paralyzed from the waist down. Spinner felt guilty for what he did to Rick, and indirectly Jimmy, of course, because he confesses to Jimmy about what he and Jay did to Rick. Basically, Spinner says, when the paint was dumped on Rick, we told him that you did it, and then he shot me. He's in some Degrassi minis, all that. So anyway, trivia says that he's one of many students who don't go by their full name. Rick was one of 12 male characters to wear his hair long, that being Clutch, Claude, Marco, Dylan, Spinner, Sean, Johnny DeMarco, Bruce the Moose, Blue, Hunter, Oliver. Before Rick died, he was actually one of 10 characters to be held back a year in school. The others were Rick Monroe, Joey, Sean, Spinner, Jimmy, Fiona, Tori, Drew, Imogen, and Dallas. Tori, I don't know why. Rick is the second Rick in the series after Rick Monroe. Rick is the second character to really abuse his ex-girlfriend. Scott from Degrassi High was the first. Rick was the first character to be thrown into a dumpster by bullies. Zane actually was second. And Rick is one of 4 characters in Degrassi to shoot somebody. Rick had shot Jimmy. Claude killed himself. Chris shot Spinner. Chris shot Spinner? How did he shoot Spinner? Him? And Vince shot Adam and Damon. Yeah, I know about Vince, but he's the 4th out of 8 to harm someone's car intentionally. You know, he's putting an X on Spinner and Jay's car doors. Spinner and Jay egged Miss Quant's car because they thought she was being unfair to them. Paige crashed Spinner's car and Nadine's car. Casey actually keyed Mr. Armstrong's car. The Fitz broke a hood ornament off Eli's hearse. Katie egged Bianca's car, and Sig dumped garbage on the French teacher's car. He's the 5th person to die in the Degrassi franchise. The others are John and Helen Wheeler, Wheels' adoptive parents, JT, Anson, Cam, like Campbell Saunders, Paula, Adam, Claude, and Dr. Manning. He was originally going to shoot Paige, but he decided not because she apologized and said the prank was childish. Rick did not go along with the shooting, but when he heard Jay and Spinner lying about Jimmy setting up the prank, Rick shot Jimmy and nearly shot Emma. And Sean killed Rick in self-defense. Rick is one of 6 characters to be shot. Claude, Jimmy, Sean, Spinner, Adam, and David were there. He was the 2nd character to bring a gun to the school, Claude being the 1st. Casey would be the 3rd because of the abuse that his coach Carson was bringing. Eli brought a gun to the school, I think for protection against Fitz. Vince brought a gun to school to go after Adam, well, for what Drew and Bianca were doing, and Hunter for some reason. So anyway, Rick was the only recurring character to obtain a major plot line. He had 6 crimes he did. He threatened and physically abused Terry. He shoved Terry, causing her to hit her head on a rock and land in a coma. He had vandalism because he spray painted the X's on Spinner and Jay's cars. He stole a gun from his own house and brought it to the school. He shot Jimmy and had the gun to Emma. So anyway, they're talking about the Terry and Rick relationship. Basically, Rick had abused Terry, and then Don't Dream It Is Over, they started another relationship. Oh, some quotes. Well, Deshaun and Toby, it says, I already shot someone. Time Stands Still Part 2. That was the last time he said something. I didn't want to have to come to this. Terry and Rick go, when Rick hurts Terry, this is what happens. Terry goes, I am so sorry. Paige does not matter. She does not matter. Please, Rick, calm down. I'm sorry. I'm just so happy that we're together again. We're made for each other. Come back. Just ignore Paige. No, let's walk. It's really far. She called me a psycho. It's just Paige being Paige. That makes it okay? Do my feelings mean nothing to you? Let's go, Rick. Don't you dare choose Paige over me again. Don't you dare. I'm going back. You can't leave, you understand? Rick, you're hurting me. You're not going. No, not. And then puts Terry's head on the rock. I thought it was because of some kind of party, but anyway. Okay, so yeah, so there's lots of things to talk about here. He had one friendship. He had one relationship. He had 6 conflicts and 1 major attraction. So let's do with the Terry Rick relationship. That lasted a couple of times. In Whisper to a Scream, Rick actually leaves roses on Terry's locker as her secret admirer, and the two of them had a relationship. Rick unfortunately became more and more controlling to Terry, which led him to be physically abusive to her on more than one occasion. Terry dumps Rick because she thought that Rick was suffocating her. Good idea. Rick decides to give everyone a second chance, but everyone is upset over it. Unfortunately, Rick pushes Terry into a coma, and basically Rick transferred out of Degrassi, only returned in season 4. So, anyway. Yeah. So basically, I think I talked about how Terry and Rick's thing came and all that. Yeah. Terry's dad wanted Terry to transfer schools because of Rick's abuse. And of course, Rick put in a bad situation. As it said that in trivia on the Terry Rick relationship, this was the first abusive relationship since Scott and Kathleen and Degrassi High. The second of 5 abusive boyfriends. The third was Bobby and Fiona. Bianca and Vince were 4th. And Allie and Leo were 5th. Hazel was the one who encouraged Terry to date Rick and then break up with him. Rick thought that Jimmy had a crush on Terry. All that. Okay. The Toby and Rick friendship was weird. The friendship began in the episode Islands in the Stream, when Toby reluctantly befriended Rick when they were members of the Wacky Brain team. Toby was actually well aware of Rick's abusive relationship with Terry, and actually did not want to be associated with the school pariah. However, because he was an outcast himself and with no friends of his own, Toby was sympathetic towards Rick and developed a liking for him. That was kind of weird. So basically, they talk in Islands in the Stream, and they have a bet on how many girls they can kiss and seem to bond. Of course, Toby easily wins because no one wants to go near Rick. So, in Time Stands Still, Toby and Rick are Wacky Brain members. Toby actually tells Rick to talk to Snake about the bullying. However, Rick decides to tell Raditch, and of course he gets brushed off. Toby is approached at the water fountain by Spinner, Jay, and Alex because they want to find Rick. All that. But Toby since he doesn't know. So anyway, Toby, of course, has to deal with the fact that his friend actually was shot and killed, and had a gun. Basically, yeah. Okay, so there was a lot of conflict with how Rick was dealing. Let's go first with the Jimmy and Rick conflict, because this is not a complete conflict. So anyway, of course, they had their conflict because Rick had accused Terry of being like friendly towards Jimmy and thought Jimmy was going to basically go by it. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, yep. So Jimmy is upset when Rick comes back. Jimmy is not. Oh, I guess I was right. Jimmy and Spinner were bullying Rick and threw him in the dumpster. I thought it was Jay and Spinner, but I guess Jimmy was there too. Anyway, Rick spray paints X on Spinner and Jay's car for revenge. Jimmy becomes a contestant because of Heather's mono. Jimmy realizes that Rick isn't so bad and realizes the bullying is too far. And basically, Jimmy stands up for him. For Rick. Unfortunately, Rick does turn around and make the X with the arms. So anyway, Jimmy is here. But anyway, Rick actually tried to find Jimmy and thought that Jimmy stabbed him in the back and shot Jimmy literally in the back. It's a lot of facts. In Eye the Tiger, Jimmy returns to school, but of course everyone except for Spinner is thrilled because Spinner is guilty because he caused Jimmy to be inadvertently shot. Jimmy's angry that Spinner didn't visit, but Jimmy also realized that Spinner would not have wanted to be there. Unfortunately, Jimmy does tell Spinner that he wishes Rick had finished him. Spinner confesses his part in the shooting, all that. So yeah. Let's go with Alex and Rick's conflict. There's a lot of conflict history. Basically this. Alex never met Rick, but she hated him because of what he did to Terry. She confesses to Emma that her mother and herself are abused by her mother's boyfriends, knowing firsthand what domestic abuse is like. Alex was actually involved in Spinner and Jay's prank on Rick, but never got punished. But she did feel guilty that she got him killed. Actually, she felt guilty about the prank and the fact that no one found out about her. So anyway, Emma, in Mercy Street, she actually accuses Emma of being friendly to Rick because of taking a check from him for money, all that. However, Emma denies this. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, she does the pain on Rick, but she doesn't get any punishment about that. Yeah, no one ever found out about her involvement, which was amazing. You know, about Alex. Okay, let's go with Jay and Rick conflict. This is the big one. There was a big conflict between Jay and Rick. Although Jay was not friends with Terry, it was likely that Jay tormented Rick because knew Alex was his girlfriend and she had an abusive home environment. It's amazing. So anyway, Rick is not too happy with Jay and all that. Let's go with the Paige and Rick conflict because you know Paige did the ribbon campaign to get him out of Degrassi. Paige is happy about it, but she was of course upset about Terry being with Rick and all that. Paige wants Terry to leave Rick because of Rick's terrible thing. So anyway, So after Rick does it to Terry, Paige doesn't know where Terry is. So she and Spinner go to check, and they see Terry on the ground with Rick running off. They start to get worried. As blood actually came out of Terry's head, they call 911. After seeing Terry at the hospital, they go to the school to confront Rick. Unfortunately, Rick's mom tells her and Spinner to leave her son alone. And Spinner feels bad for himself. But anyway, Paige and her friends are upset when Mercy Street Rick comes back. Someone tell me I'm hallucinating. Emma comes up and asks who Rick is, and they tell Emma that Rick was Terry's ex and that he's the one who put her in a coma. Basically, Raj does not agree with the students. Rick does go up to Paige and tries to apologize for what he did to Terry. Unfortunately, Paige is upset, so they do the ribbon campaign, and the whole school basically bullies him and all that. So anyway, there's a lot of things going on. Paige kicks Emma out of the group because Emma protected Rick when it wasn't really his thing. So anyway, Paige actually makes fun of Rick's suit, but Rick doesn't care. Paige witnesses the yellow paint and white feathers. So anyway, Rick is ready to kill Paige because he thought she was the one behind everything, but she thought that the prank was childish and she's sorry about that. Rick changes his mind and says he's sorry for what he did to Terry. And the conflict was resolved, but Paige was upset about Terry and all that. Yeah. The Emma and Rick conflict is the Emma and Rick one-sided relationship. But anyway, this is what Emma has to deal with it. When Rick returns and repeats his 10th grade because of his departure, everyone's mad about him. The other students feel that he should not be in school, but Raj disagrees. Paige and Emma begin a silent protest with the orange ribbons, which means that Rick is victim of violence. Emma realizes everything has gone too far when Jay is beating up Rick for no reason. All that. Now you gotta realize that, as I probably keep saying, that Rick was doomed. I mean, like, the whole student body was mad that Rick was allowed to come back without any charges, without any repercussions. I think that's what the students thought. They were upset that the administration were refused to do anything. So anyway. So anyway, Emma plays part in Toby and Rick's Kisses from Girls. She actually gives both boys a kiss on the cheek just for the heck of it. And Rick says that he's not going to show her Emma. So after Jimmy's on Wacky Brain, Rick wants to quit because he doesn't want Jimmy bullying him. But Emma says, you got to make it up with Jimmy. We're a team. Rick decides to. He actually makes up with Jimmy and they're ready for the events. When they get through, Rick says this is all for her and holds on to her. And Emma's like, stop pulling my hand. So Rick wins the competition. Rick runs out after being painted and feathered. Emma tells him that none of this matters. You saved the school with your smarts. She actually tries to comfort him, but Rick kisses her. But Emma pushes him away. Rick said, Emma, I thought you loved him. Emma says that she just felt sorry for him. Get a clue and walk away. Rick is heartbroken and he decides to bring a gun to the school, obviously to kill her. Rick heads to Degrassi with his dad's handgun. When he shoots Jimmy, he finds Emma with Toby and Sean. Sean tells Emma and Toby, get away from Rick because of the gun. But Rick tells Emma she just played with his feelings and that she made it to his list. Sean tries to convince Rick to put the gun down and everything will be okay. And Rick, after saying he shot somebody, was ready to kill Emma. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Sean accidentally kills Rick. And they said that Emma started a ribbon campaign to get Rick out of Degrassi because it was bullying. Emma only became friends with Rick because she felt sorry for him. Rick had a crush on Emma and thought Emma liked him back, but no. Though Rick intended to shoot Emma, she felt terrible about his death, watching him die. So yeah, it's amazing. And of course, Rick was Spinner because Spinner feels guilty for what he did to um, Jimmy. Of course, Spinner was the one who, alongside Paige, found Terry unconscious, and they're upset. Spinner's upset with Rick for what they did. Spinner is upset that he didn't fix the problem. So anyway, Spinner actually involved in the punching and all that, Mercy Street and all that. Spinner and Jamie actually throw him in a dumpster. Rick spray paints a car on the X on Spinner's car. They want to get revenge on Rick. Spinner wants to tell Raj, but Sean says that Raj would want to know why Rick did it, and Jay agrees with him. They need to get Rick on their own. Spinner and them actually confront Toby and put Toby in a bad spot. Spinner is upset. So Spinner and Jay go up to Rick saying that he's really good and says that everything is cool and he should do the tiebreaker. Spinner does ask Jay when can Alex set up the prank and Alex can handle it, and he did. So anyway, Spinner does feel bad. So anyway, Spinner and Jay come in talking about what happened to Rick. They see Rick hiding and decide to put the blame on Jimmy to avoid Rick having an idea of who he was, of who did it. Later, Rick shot Jimmy and then accidentally was killed himself. Spinner feels that he should never bully Rick and wants to see Jimmy even though he's responsible for what happened to Jimmy. He tried to go to the hospital. He even felt guilty thinking that I should confess to the police, but basically Jerry refuses to let Spinner apologize. Spinner finally reveals to Jimmy about why Jimmy got shot. Basically, he gets expelled. He does tell Darcy that he's responsible for the school shooting and fooling. Spinner does have a flashback what happened to Rick, and he actually asks Jay if he feels bad for what happened to Rick, but Jay tells him that Rick was a psycho and the world should be thanking him that he's gone. All that. Obviously. Yeah. It's amazing what can happen to somebody. You gotta feel bad for Rick. I mean, the main question everyone asks me is how much sympathy should we give Rick? Now, I would give Rick a lot of sympathy, but because he chose to plot revenge, such as that spray paint thing, and he chose to bring a gun to the school, you can't really be sympathetic towards him. He got bullied and all that. If he had done nothing for retaliation, zero, zilch, nada, you have to feel sympathy for him. But because Rick made the decision to try to get revenge, and Rick made the decision to try to kill Jimmy and kill Emma, you can't give him sympathy. I mean, I know that his parents deserve a little bit of sympathy, but not Rick. And Rick did the one thing that he should have done. Didn't do the one thing he should have done. He should have been more forward to his parents. He should have been more forward to Raditch. He should have been more forward with himself. I know he wanted to stay at Degrassi. He thought that everything would be fine and all that. But maybe Rick comes back, like takes a year off of Degrassi and then comes back in like season 5. Do you think he'll get more sympathy? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But Rick fucked himself up, quite frankly, by not being straightforward with everyone. His retaliation and his lack of straightforwardness cost him dearly. He didn't deserve to die, but the best thing about it is that he didn't have to face a trial, which I did in my what if. I did that fanfic, and it would have been much messier. So maybe Rick deserved to die because at the trial things would have been said and things would have been done, and his character would have been really ripped to shreds. So thank you for watching and have a good day.